Okay, we've been submitted a case here today to evaluate for immediate placement and the quality of the plan. Again, first thing, this is a great OptiGuide case. How much CEREC data do we have? More than enough to get an OptiGuide, and we have a tooth design there. So in looking at this, the first thing I noticed, my initial first concern in this particular case are two things. One, the length of the implant that's used. Not that there's anything wrong with a 15 millimeter implant. I just get concerned from experience that very few patients are able to open up wide enough to allow us to get a guided 15 millimeter implant in. But it does happen. And then two other concerns that I see are one, based on this CEREC data here, I can see that this tooth has recession, and typically where there's gum loss, there's also bone loss. So I'm concerned about our buccal plate height and then our buccal lingual positioning here. So if we again walk through everything here, um, our buccal lingual positioning is the first thing that sticks out to me in our planning. So if we take a look here, here's our buccal plate, and here's our that was the lingual plate. Here's our buccal plate. We can see that if we measure this area, there's a significant distance here in comparison to here. So in an ideal world, I would want this a little bit more centered, like so. And obviously, in doing that, that moves that towards the lip. So I want to have this a little bit more centered. I know in doing that, that moves that to the lingual, but again, we'll fix that as we move forward. Mesial-distal spacing looks pretty good here. So the way I visualize this, again, is I visualize my root here, and that's the distance. In an ideal starting point world, I'd want this a little bit more centered. So if anything, I'd say that we need to have it a little bit more right here. Okay. So again, these are starting points, and then we adjust as we move forward in our plan. Next level is bone level. Okay, so the typical point that I start with for immediate placement is I will typically start at the furcation. So here, my furcation is right there, but our implant plan is right there. Now, if we go back to the fact that we have this recession right here, we're probably in a situation where our buccal plate is probably somewhere right here in this particular situation. So if we were to draw our margin, we can see what we're dealing with a little bit better, and we can see that our implant is now planned a little bit above that. So what is our solution to this? One train of thought on predictability would be to consider doing extraction, grafting. Since we have essentially what is a buccal defect here, we can do a membrane with some graft material and try to rebuild our buccal plate here and then come back and place the implant. And truthfully, from a predictability standpoint, that is probably the more logical thing to do. So again, in looking at this, my assessment based on this scan is that our buccal plate goes to right there. Our bone level for our buccal plate is right there. Our bone level for our lingual is right there. So we have this angulation right here that is going to create some predictability issues. Again, is it possible to place this implant and graft over the top? Absolutely. Again, the question is going to be predictability of whether or not that will be able to be maintained and not have threads exposed. Continuing to move forward, our vital structures, again, we can see our nerve is way down here, allowing us to go with the 15 millimeter implant. And then the next step would be occlusal plane. Our occlusal plane looks pretty darn good right here. And our occlusal table, in looking at that, we can see that if we look at that and like that, we can see that there is more room here. And this was not the way the plan was submitted, but the things that we changed from a buccal lingual positioning of the implant. So to me, the solution to this would be one, to move the implant over, but that's how we had it and we didn't like that. So now my solution is going to be to tilt the implant from the head and also from the apex to go ahead and get this a little bit more centered. Now we can see we're centered, and what I would like to do is just show us my plan buccal lingually positioned compared to the original plan buccal lingually positioned, and we can see the tremendous difference there. We don't necessarily want to go in through the root because, as you can see here, one of the reasons this tooth has probably lost some recession is the buccal plate was thin. So in this particular case, I would want to actually do this for another reason. It's also going to help me gain, if we choose to do an immediate placement here, it's going to help me gain primary stability. As you can see how much of the implant now is engaged in bone in comparison to this scan, to this plan where, where so little of the implant is engaging, making primary stability a little bit more difficult. So other than that, very well done. I would, in this particular case, very likely consider doing a socket guided bone regeneration with a membrane, and maybe even a PTFE membrane, since primary closure will probably be very difficult in this particular situation, and then coming back to place the implant due to this sloping bone height. Thank you, and hope this was very helpful.